What if we're missing the point about AI's real role in the future of work? The narrative is that AI is going to wipe out most jobs as bots and AI agents take over the world. However, in the many conversations that I've had with people inside AI development, the story is very different. And it's a story that gets far less publicity than the doom and gloom sci-fi version that dominates most mainstream discussions. I'm Jane Singer, and welcome back to A Seat at the Table, where we take a look at what's working, what's not, and best practices for moving forward in a very competitive market. Today we're welcoming Bud Bhattacharyya, co-founder of Recompound, an AI advisory firm helping senior leaders use AI beyond the task efficiency layer. In this episode of A Seat at the Table, we'll be discussing why AI for productivity is only the beginning, not the main event. Why more output actually makes senior judgment harder, not easier. How AI can multiply human capability instead of simply replacing human work, and what organizations get wrong when they treat AI as a tool layer rather than a thinking and decision layer. So if you're ready to learn more about the inside view of AI, let's sit down with Bud and learn how we might reframe the AI narrative. Bud, it is fantastic to have you with us here on A Seat at the Table. I'm so excited to dive into this topic with you because, to be honest with you, it is such a critical topic right now. In fact, we have a conference coming up a week from today, and that's going to be one of the key topics for a group of senior level people in industry. Timing is absolutely perfect.
It really is. It really is.
Now, you say that efficiency is the floor, right? And capability is the ceiling. I think that's just so well put. Explain a little bit about what you mean by that.
Yeah, of course. I think uh, to the current day, most people think of AI as an efficiency tool. It helps you do research faster. It helps
Right.
you to write documents faster. Yeah, it helps you to do analysis and produce Excel charts and PowerPoints and all of the things that are the task execution of modern work, at least modern knowledge work. Um, I think people think that AI will help them do that faster, and maybe the language will be better, it'll be a little bit more polished. That's how people tend to think of AI, and then from that comes the direct next thing that people think of. Okay, so now AI is doing the job faster, so now we can use less humans to do the job, and so that becomes its own kind of narrative. Um, to me, all of that is true. All of that is 100% true. AI does help you execute all of the tasks that you used to do much, much faster, and maybe it looks more polished and all of that. But that's not the interesting question to me. The interesting question is, what can AI help you do that you just could not do before? If you get your job done, so let's say you have an 8-hour day, and now you can get the job done in 6 hours, or 7 hours, or 5 hours, whatever the number is. What do you do with the rest of your time? That's the question that's interesting to me. Can you use that time not to produce more of the same outputs, but increase the capability of what you do? Like, what are the things that you could never do before that now suddenly become possible? That's the interesting question, the capability question.
I think that's such an excellent point. And you're so right. I mean, we're not thinking of it in the right way. I think that many of us, myself included, have really been seduced by what you can do with AI in terms of, like you say, the basic efficiency, that we're overlooking that big picture of, no, it's not about efficiency, right? It's like you said, it's about expanding the capabilities. And I think that's such a critical point that it's one of the things people really aren't thinking about and aren't looking at. And it really ties in, I think, with what you say with regard to AI conversation being stuck on productivity, automation, cost reduction. Um, and there's such interesting data that's come out that sort of is countering that. But I'll let you explain what you see around that.
Yeah, I think it's not surprising to me that the conversation is stuck on things like productivity and efficiency gains. The technology in general, we've been conditioned to think of technology as an efficiency kind of play. And in this particular case, it's like the minutes saved or the hours saved or how fast you can do this before than you had to is uh, first of all, it's a factor of like those things are easy to measure. It's easy to say how many minutes. It's easy to say how many hours, and then easy to say then therefore how many fewer humans would you require to do the work.
Right.
Things like what are the new skills that you've developed? What are the new capabilities? What can this organization do that it could never do before? Those
Right.
things are hard. It requires it doesn't require measurement as much as imagination. Like reimagine what's possible. This is how the work was done before. You could not reimagine how that's going to be done in the future. To take all the work that is the base level and repetitive work, the things that the machine can do. Let the machine take that work and let humans get better at the things that humans are good at. So like relationship building, entrepreneurship, creativity, connecting things. The machine can take some of the base level work out that hopefully then institutions and organizations will then encourage the human to get better at other things, the things that the machine can't do very well. That's the real prize there. That there's a space now, there's a budget now, a time budget, and more than that, even an attention budget for the human to focus on the things that are really higher value things versus the grunt work. That to me is the promise. That to me is the optimism.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And you're right, nobody looks at that, maybe because, like you say, the efficiency, the time saving, the cost saving, or at least initially so, it's easier to quantify, right? And particularly if you're in a large organization, you need to be able to quantify things in order, in a sense, to defend them. So when you're getting out of that scope, so to speak, um, you're in a gray area that is hard within a larger organization to be able to justify, and so therefore you always fall back, right, to the
Mm-hmm.
easier thing. But I think it's really interesting because I recently saw some numbers. Um, I think this was research by Goldman Sachs, but they talk about that with some of the larger organizations, the actual cost of having humans do certain things at this point is now cheaper than the cost of AI. Now, granted, we're comparing enterprise level AI, not to someone who's got a $20 a month ChatGPT or Perplexity subscription, right? We're talking about something on a bigger scale. But
Much.
they did point to interesting examples, right? Like on data entry, one of the things that they had pointed to is it's actually cheaper on a call center, for example, a little bit cheaper to have a human agent than it is to have an AI bot. And I thought, wow, you never would have thought about that, right?
You never would have thought about that. The amounts of money involved, the investment in the AI infrastructure is mind-boggling. It like
Yeah,
dwarfs. If you look at the numbers, the total numbers that worldwide that has been spending, and most of it is enterprise AI,
right.
not for the personal people. Uh, Between the frontier labs, the infrastructure companies, the consulting companies that are coming in to install and train people on this, the fees that normal organizations and businesses are paying first for the access to the platforms, then the data connectivity and the governance around it. It is
Yeah.
absolutely out of off the charts. So I am not surprised at some point that for a while at least that those curves will flip, right? This is what you're seeing. An entry level data entry human will, I'm not surprised, cost less than that whole ecosystem of technology. I'm not so sure. I'm not sure where the investment question will like end up. I think the train has left the station. People are investing in this. People are investing more money in this. The market caps that people are talking about of companies like Anthropic and OpenAI are like out of this world, right?
Right.
So, like, what the costs will like actually come down to in 4 or 5, which is what matters, 4 or 5, 10 years. I'm not so sure. But the fact that right now that's where the costs are like are happening, that doesn't surprise me. the sharper question to me over there, or the worry, I think, is not to take that entry-level job, whatever it is. Maybe it is the data entry person. Maybe it's the business analyst in a consulting firm or a investment bank. Maybe it's the people who are at the front lines of the sales teams, or whatever it is. It's not absurd to me that you can replace that work, which obviously starts with like a lot of task level work. It's an entry level job, right? With AI, but like those entry level jobs serve a purpose for the organization and the career arc of the person. People develop judgment and wisdom, or whatever the word you want to use to describe what senior folks do, the partners and the managers and things like that, by first doing that repetitive task level work.
Right.
So if you get rid of the junior, you're not going to have any seniors in 3 or 4 years that are capable of executing that. And I think it gets worse. It's an apprenticeship problem. The apprenticeship system has just broken. First with COVID and work from home, and now this. And it's worse than having no teacher. Juniors are essentially getting trained day after day, year after year by this AI model that's not fit to teach. We haven't taught the AI model how to do that job. And so it worries me a little bit about the focus on just the money is different between the focus on the salary versus like the cost of the AI. That's just one thing. You're taking out a whole piece of your skilling in an apprenticeship program in your company, and I don't hear enough talk about that.
I think that's really important, and I'm glad you brought that up, because again, another thing that's been overlooked in the conversations, the focus on efficiency is so overwhelmingly attractive, right? Especially in companies that are living quarter to quarter. It's hard to look beyond that, right? But as you're saying, if you don't train people up, and if they don't have their hands in the clay at that entry level, right, at that apprentice level, how are they going to be managing? You can't really go from zero to hero without any of those in-between years of understanding how things work, why they work the way they do. Otherwise, you're just looking at a spreadsheet, and we know where that goes. So I think that's also another critical point, that we need to, reshape how we're framing AI. And, it's interesting because no one's really thought about what the actual cost is going to be. And again, like you're saying, the market caps are so high that, the IPO figures are so high, but nobody's thought about what happens when investors no longer want to subsidize this at a loss.
100%. Like forget the consumers, the personal consumers should, I think, realize that you're in a honeymoon period where, like, for free or like $20 a month, you are getting billions of dollars of investment, because that's what it takes to sometimes train these frontier models. And people don't understand how these models work.
Right.
And we can talk about that if you'd like. But like, it's in terms of how the companies are approaching this in terms of productivity, I won't say everyone, right? There are companies that I think are at the front line saying much closer to what my version of what I think is reality. IBM, for example. IBM has tripled this year their entry-level hires. Exactly with that, I think, logic in mind, that we want to capitalize on human labor now, because that human labor can be freed up now for things that it couldn't be before, now that the attention budget has been widened. So I think IBM is doing a good job. There's a couple of banks in your neck of the woods in Hong Kong, that I think have a good comparison here. Like, so Standard Chartered say that they want to eliminate more than 7,000 jobs by 2030, and like Bill Winters is the CEO. Saying the bank is replacing some lower value human capital with technology and investment capital, which is the kind of the standard language. And as far as that logic goes, it makes sense. There are jobs that are no longer needed, or parts of jobs that are no longer needed, so lower value human capital. that takes it to a point. I would contrast that with the HSBC, right?
Right.
The HSBC CEO, like said, AI will destroy and create jobs, but framed his immediate mission as giving roughly 200,000 colleagues the capabilities, training, and tools to be future ready and more productive. I think HSBC stance goes a bit further than Standard Chartered, probably not as far as you could go, because they're still talking a little bit about like mass layoffs and things, but we shall see where it ends up. But I think the rhetoric of the companies are useful for us to look at to give us a clue of how they're thinking about this topic. And so it's not, I don't think it's uniform across the market.
Yeah, it's interesting, and there's a lot of learning going on. We went from AI being introduced as sort of this fairy dust that you sprinkle on anything, and it suddenly has incredible capabilities, to
Yeah.
now more companies starting to think about what it's costing them again at an enterprise level. Um, and then, like you say, it's going to hit at a consumer level as soon as the idea of just gaining users at any cost becomes now we have to turn a profit. So it will be interesting to see. Now, you talk about how can AI make leaders more capable, right? I mean, we're talking about adding capability rather than efficiency and cutting staff. Can you explain a little bit what you see around that in terms of the kind of capabilities and tell me a little bit about what you're thinking?
Yeah. So there's a if you follow what's happening with the efficiencies and the tasks, it producing output has become like cheap and easy and like plausible, polished looking output. So the task execution is becoming a cheap, easy, and increasingly table stakes. You can't really differentiate anymore by generating more like research and analysis now because everybody's doing it. Everybody's using the same kind of frontier models. If you think about the judgment layer,
Mm,
which the seniors and leaders have that's their responsibility. That thing is getting harder,
right,
not easier, because what happened before? Say there was a CFO. They had a team of 10 people, and the team of 10 people would go off and do work and come back to the CFO, and the CFO would make sense of it. Now you have this model giving the CFO 500 signals every day, right?
right.
It's like every possible scenario, every like people, it can do that, and people are sort of using it to produce more, generate more. So how is that CFO now supposed to make sense of the 500 signals? Uh,
Right.
that thing people are not thinking about. There are ways to use AI to scale and
Mm,
compound senior people's judgment, which is the scarce thing. And
right.
uh, and so we have to make our from juniors onwards. There needs to be a focus on how do you train that kind of judgment. So when the cost of asking questions to the AI model becomes cheap, the value of knowing what questions to ask and how to make sense of what comes back to you, and then steer the inquiry you're doing with this AI model forward, those things suddenly become the most important things. They were already important, right? So how do you frame the problem? How do you design the inquiry sequence? Like, what tasks is this machine producing? Yeah, it can do tasks. What tasks are worth producing? Framing that design inquiry or the problem, that is important. Judging, assessing, evaluating what comes back, correcting the inquiry, like changing the architecture of the design, deciding what is good, what to keep, and what isn't good, sending the thing back to the next pass, do some more generations, and then preserving the understanding that comes back. Those are the skills that suddenly become, that's what I'm calling judgment. I just broke judgment down in the problem solving into a few steps. Those are the things that suddenly become, they were always important, but now they are the entire game because everybody's doing execution for free. Those things are the entire game. So how do we train that for our young leaders and onwards?
And how do you get your leaders to be able to balance the feedback they get from AI versus their own judgment? Because it's easy to become reliant on that. It's easy, even now, using consumer level AI, right? To put something in, questions in, what do you suggest I do, whatever, and ask whatever AI you're using to give you feedback. it's easy to fall into that trap of thinking what AI tells you is smarter than maybe what your gut says or what you're getting from other sources. So how do you balance that? How do you create that model that says AI is just another voice around the table? You know what I'm saying? If you're sitting there with three other people or executives at your same level with your same capability, and one of them is AI, and two of them, how do you put that into perspective without just saying, "Oh, well, it must be right?" If the computer came up with it.
Oh boy. Yeah. This one, it's a very, very good question. And I think honestly, it is a mindset thing.
Mm.
It is too cognitively easy for us to fall into the trap of thinking that's a person or a teammate
Yes.
because the language is fluent and our brains have evolved to think that that's a teammate.
Yeah.
It's a very good question. I don't hear enough people asking it because you get into these cognitive modes with long stretches of the AI where you think it's a teammate and you start optimizing for politics and or niceties, social
Right.
niceties.
Right.
Yeah, and you don't want to do that. I assure you that thing is not conscious. It feels like it is. I assure you it's not. The same kind of fallacy appears in the output it produces. It is so polished and so
Right.
plausible sounding that you want to kind of believe it. But you have to train yourself to be skeptical of
Yeah.
that. You have to first start with what I said when you said frame the problem. Frame it in your head without the machine. Put it on paper if you have to. Put it on like Word or like frame the problem in your head. Get a sense of what is good. What would good look like in the answer before you get the answers. Because once the answers come back, it's easy to fall into that trap. It is really kind of a mindset thing to me. You can't fall into the trap of thinking it's a teammate. You are the teammate, right? And that is a tool or an assistant or whatever you want to call it that is helping you uh, hone your own thoughts. And if you think of it like that, it is great. If you think of it as if you surrender the cognitive leadership and let it take you through the thing, you're gonna get a bad product. Like if you've heard of this term, human in the loop, right? So companies are talking about you need a human in the loop, you need a human in the loop, and of course you need a human in the loop, but it's too thin the way that most people and organizations are defining it. The human is not in the loop to just approve the outputs at the end, or to like say yes, no, or check, or like escalate if something looks. The human is in the loop to govern the entire loop, the work,
Right.
right, and to keep it from drifting, keep it from make sure that it addresses the purpose, keeps to your constraints that you have specified for it. All of that is the entire human's work. You're not actually doing the Excel anymore, or you shouldn't be, and you have to then govern that inquiry actively throughout the whole thing, from problem definition to the compounding and preserving the state. There's no other way. There's no other way. If you want to get this right, human in the loop has to be a governorship job throughout the work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important that you pointed out, and I think that it's something we all need to consider because it's true. When you first get your hands on AI, it does sound like you're saying it's that ideal teammate, and it's easy to get sucked into that without realizing that it has its limitations in some ways. Now, you talk about the live state of work. I think that's really important.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that. I mean, why does it matter for executives and expert-led firms?
Yeah. So this, I think, is one of the most underused applications of AI that I can think of. At least it's the bridge to where you get from tasks to how can the tasks help me with
Mm,
making decisions, better decisions, helping me figure out what not the next task to do is what is the next and highest leverage move I can make next, right? And so what the AI can do is take all of those outputs, the continuous output, if you set it up right, take all of those continuous outputs, news, current events from the internet, things that are coming from your clients, things that are coming from regulators, and put it all together for the current decision picture of that complex work. It's not a summary, it's not a synthesis, it's things like what matters now? What's changed since the last time we interacted? What hasn't changed? What assumptions did we make that are now broken? What collisions are coming up between, say, a regulator announcing something or a client wanting some deadline? What are those collisions? And then given all of this, what are the most important decisions that the human needs to focus attention on? And sometimes they're not obvious. And what are the best available next moves? That kind of thing. So yeah, so that senior people, if the machine maintains that live state, the human, the senior human, can re-enter the work at altitude instead of having to climb from the ground up every single time that.
Hello?
Work. So there may be a senior partner who comes in, and in fact, is in 2 weeks, and they have to start from the beginning, and they have to climb up, and that's so it's a brief that could take 30 minutes, and still not get to the heart of the matter. The thing that's most important can now be a 3-minute read if you set it up right. And the machine. This is what the AI is good at. The AI is good at like taking all of that stuff and then like putting it all together, mashing it all together, and seeing what is important and what matters. The AI is better at that than humans are. There are some things that the machine is better at. That thing it does really well. And I think it's underused.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to frame it. And there's just so much to unpack around AI because it hit the market and it hit it hard, and the hype cycle went crazy. And now it's a matter of dialing it back and I think trying to understand what it does well, what it doesn't do well, what are the risks, what are the potential, fantastic uses of it, and figuring that out. And I think a lot of people haven't gotten to that yet, right? Because we're still in that, as you pointed out earlier, that honeymoon phase, right? Where it's new and exciting, and there's that, what you always get when there's new technology, whether it be AI now or electric lights 100 years ago.
Yeah, of course.
So it's interesting to look at that and to realize it's really a tool, and we just have to figure out how do we use it and what are the risks. And the risks don't mean don't use it; it just means understand so that you can manage it. Now, what do you see as the more hopeful vision as you frame it for AI? Because, the upside, as we're saying, is all the things it can do. But then there's also that other side, the layoffs, the fear of people, masses of people not having any work and, everything that goes around that. So what are you seeing? What's your point of view on this?
I am actually incredibly optimistic and hopeful about AI. I also have a lot of fears. I like this thing about hallucinations and the AI making stuff up. They're real. They're real,
Yes.
and they're real for a structural reason. And I'll tell you the structural reason here is like it's not in many cases the AI is just not making stuff up. What's happening is the human is coming in and giving it an instruction in prompt number 1 or prompt number 2, and in serious work, most of the time, those prompts in the beginning are hideously incomplete. The human doesn't know what the problem is. It doesn't know a lot of things. It doesn't know some of the constraints that the client might have or the leader might have. And so what the machine does, the machine comes in with, from what I can see and what Anthropic and the big other labs are saying, with kind of 2 prerogatives. It comes in trying to please the human, and so it sometimes is sycophantic a little bit, and it tries to produce an artifact as quickly as possible. So it gives you the best fit artifact it can think of, and anything you didn't specify or any kind of assumptions that were needed, kind of silently makes it up. And then from then on, you are just kind of iterating on the words of the artifact and making it polished, and you get like essentially like a polished looking thing that solves a nearby problem instead of the actual problem. What? So that's dangerous, and I see a lot of it. And then the other problem with the pessimism is like we're going to lay off humans, and that's if companies kind of like follow each other off a cliff there, that really is a nightmare scenario. But the hopeful vision here is that this can raise the capabilities of the human race beyond what it could have done like a year ago, which is like this kind of discontinuity is like very, very rare. I mean, it happens, but like it's quite rare. The fact that you can take the attention and time that was being spent on like repetitive like work that can be farmed out now, and then have the human do things that they couldn't do before, develop skills that they didn't have before, and create value that the organization didn't have before, that to me is very hopeful. And more than that, I think there is a possibility, at least, of this creating more, disproportionately more benefit from some segments of the population that necessarily didn't have the full voice being considered. So I would imagine like, the people who were like a bit introverted in meetings, in some cases like minorities, in some cases women were afraid to speak up in many situations because they didn't want to admit their opinion into the general discourse until they were more sure of it. Hey, here's a machine now you can play it out with. Like, go do that, and then go speak at the meeting. I think that to me is also the fact that it can help people that didn't have a voice before own their voice. I'm all for that. I'm all for that.
Yeah. There's just tremendous possibilities, and as you're pointing out, we have to get beyond the hype and really think more creatively about how we're applying AI and understanding a long-term effect. As you're saying, if you fire everybody of your junior level people because you say that the AI can handle these jobs, you don't have anybody who's trained up to do that senior leadership. It'll take a couple of years, but pretty soon you have no middle managers, and then you have no senior managers. So I think that's important. I think that, understanding how to put a frame around it. As you're pointing out, it's not sentient. It's not a human being. And so therefore you have to be able to balance what AI is telling you with what other factors are that you're thinking and feeling based on your experience. So I think, you've brought up a lot of really excellent points here, a lot of things that I think people listening to this are really thinking about now. And I've learned a tremendous amount through our conversation.
Thank you. It's something that I'm quite passionate, I guess is the word. It's a technology that I think is very rare and has tremendous amount of potential, but also, and this is how the world tends to work, isn't it? It has a tremendous potential for misuse as well.
Yeah.
And so the question for leaders is not whether AI will save time and efficiency. Of course it will. Like for people who say that it will not take some parts of some human jobs, that is an argument that I think it's a losing argument. It is clear that AI will take some parts of some jobs. The question to me is whether that free capacity gets simply pocketed by shareholders as margin, reinvested in more task automation. And those things are, those are moves that, I'll save you money, but every competitor in your industry will be able to do that move. And that's a race to the bottom. Soon, the market economics will be like, okay, you're shaving off costs, therefore we'll shave off price, and that keeps going. And that's how competition works. Everyone has access to that move, fire people and do more automation. Or you can redeploy those savings into more and enhanced human capabilities, into judgment, apprenticeship, client depth, institutional memory, right? Like how does it can help them take that judgment and in machine form, transport it to other people, other departments, and essentially help you make better decisions and serve your employees and your clients in ways that you never could before. That's the path. That path, unlike the first one or the first two, creates lasting competitive advantage, because that's capabilities and not simply cost reduction. And then cost reduction has a floor. It's a finite floor. You can't save more costs than you are now expending on your labor. Capability multiplication has at least an unknown ceiling. And I can tell you that ceiling is much, much higher than your floor for cost reduction.
Yeah, very well said. Well, Bud, thank you so much for joining us here on A Seat at the Table. It's just been fantastic to have the opportunity to chat with you. I'm going to put where people can connect with you in the show notes. If you're listening to this as a podcast or if you're seeing it as a video, you'll see it in the description area. I think there's so much more to explore, but I know you're on your way to catch a plane, so I don't want to keep you. I know what that's like. But thanks
Yes,
again for joining us here.
absolutely. Thank you for having me. And at the end of the day, I trust the human race, and I think we'll get to a good place.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us here today on A Seat at the Table. If you'd like to see some of the other episodes, head on over to our podcast website at seat.fm. That's SEAT.fm. There's also a link here in the show notes. And if you're thinking that you'd like to be a guest on the show, you'll find information on how to apply there as well. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Jane Singer, and I will see you in the next episode.